a world where we have everything and it's still not enough, we're often left wondering, is this really it?
Deep inside, you know there's more to life. You're ready to leave behind the old push your way through and claim the deeper, more meaningful life that's calling you.
That's what we invite you to explore with us.
We're your hosts,
Stephanie Allen
and Maren. And this is the Soulful Leader Podcast.
Yay! Hi, welcome to the Soulful Leader Podcast. This is Stephanie, and I'm here with Maren. And I've just had an interesting experience of leading a tour, something I do in another part of my life. And it's been really interesting because it's a lot about giving. Like we talked a lot about giving and receiving. And ultimately, we need to do both. I talk about the inhale and the exhale. Like one is not better than the other. So what happens when you encounter someone who struggles receiving? Who, whether they can't take a compliment, whether they can't take a tip, whether they can't take advice, whether they can't take a gift, doesn't matter. It's like I know we all have come into contact with people who kind of push it away or say, oh no, that's okay. Thank you very much. I don't need that. And yet, there's a part of them that is deeply longing for something. And you so want to be able to offer it to them. But because they have in their own mind of how it's meant to come in or how it's meant to look like or feel like, no matter if it's slightly off, no way they're not going to accept it. And of course, I'm talking about myself here too. Like, I'm very aware of when I am offering something to someone. I've been like that too. Like I'll get set in my own mind of I want a client or I want an experience or I want something to happen and it has to look, feel, and be this way and sound this way. And
like
anything that deviates,
exactly,
in any way that is going to deviate, well, then that's not the way I want it. And I realized this is a problem. This is a deep problem.
And I think it's even deeper than it's not the way that I want it. I think it's more of we don't even recognize that it's shown up because we have in our mind that it's going to look a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
My example with that is when I was running my ballroom dance studio and I had this image for I was getting it started and it was going to be successful. And then my husband, when he retired, was going to come and work with me and he was going to make it even more successful because we have very differing points of view that complement each other. And I had this whole scenario in my mind and he retired and didn't do that. And so my next level of success eluded me for years because in my mind, success equaled my husband coming and joining me in the business. And when he didn't do that, now I wasn't able to be successful because I had joined those two things together so solidly and concretely that my poor husband, he was being punished for not doing what I thought he should do. And then my business was being punished. I was sabotaging myself because I couldn't see past my own vision of here's what I want. And I didn't leave the door open to that could look a lot of different ways. It was, nope, it looks like this. This is what success looks like. And when I finally was able to let that go, it was amazing because it was like people had been knocking on the door trying to help me. And I was like, nope. Just like you're saying, I couldn't receive. I couldn't allow it in because I couldn't even see it.
Yeah. So I think sometimes we if we can catch ourselves in those ways, I want to go a little deeper in that way though, Maren, of what is it inside ourselves? Like when we talk about our soul, our soul, our true self, our soul has never known pain or suffering or lack or, hate or terror. It's never known any of that. It only knows love and joy and peace. So all of these things get layered upon us and we think it's us, meaning well, I'm just this way. That's the way I am. you can't change me.
Meaning
Or
like I'm in pain all the time, or I'm a
yeah,
grumpy person, or
exactly.
whatever the fill in the blank, I'm lazy. I'm like all the things that what you like to call it, the itty bitty shitty committee
Right. So
tells us we are.
I think sometimes like what I've noticed is when I'm trying to give to someone and it's not in the way that they think it should be, they can sometimes feel like I'm putting my agenda on them. So
Mm.
I look at that. I'm like, well, geez, I'm going to look at that because I definitely don't want to put my agenda on someone I care about. And I have to ask myself, well, is that true? Or is that just a story that's being made up? And instead of saying, hey, I see you're needing help here. Would it be okay if I did X, Y, or Z for you?
Well, you had told
Hmm.
me a story about someone on the tour where you met up with another guide that was having a very stressful
Oh,
day.
oh, yeah, she was a hot mess.
She
So
was a hot
yeah, she was
mess.
a hot
And
mess.
there was
God
a
love
lot
her.
of stuff, God love her, that was going wrong for
Yeah.
her.
Yeah.
And you offered to help her, right?
Yeah, she had an incident where she was trying to get bags out at a certain time so she could meet, she could get everybody on board the motor coach so that they could arrive at their next destination on time. And the bags were slow, and so she was kind of in this motion of like, come on, make this happen. And she was pushing, pushing, pushing. And what happened with her energy pushing, one of her passengers fell down the stairs and shattered her leg. And in consequently of this passenger falling down, one of my passengers was walking down behind her and fell over her. And this poor woman was just, the tour director of the other motor coach was so beside herself. Like she was yelling at the front desk people, she was yelling at the bellhop, she was yelling at me, she was yelling at the passengers. And instead of just like, I mean, the part of me was so empathetic. I was just like, oh man, I know what this is like. You know what she's going to have to go through. Like, I hope this person has insurance. I hope, all these things that are going to happen, incident reports. And I was just breathing saying, is there anything I can do to help you? Like, what can I do to help you? Like, I've been there before. I know what it's like. And she just kind of snapped at me and screamed. She goes, you need to control your people. And I'm like, well, my people are all on the motor coach right now. They're all fine. I'm like, and I just heard it was just like she had no space to receive from me. She
Mm.
was so in it that she couldn't see that not only did she have me, but she had another my driver, my motor coach driver, and one of the tour escorts that was with me. All three of us could have helped her. But instead, she was in that push away, like I'm in a hot mess and nobody can fix it but me. And sometimes you just have to walk away from that. And it was really heartbreaking for me to see her at that. But at the same time, how does one work with oneself to say, okay, I just got to let this go. I want to be in service and help her, but she's not letting, or she's not in a place that she can be receptive to it.
So I see two things I wanted to mention is one of them, we've all been in that place. And that's the exact place that I was just talking about with the studio of like, I pushed everything else away because like it was going to look like this. Right. So looking back, I know that there was tons of help that was offered to me for the success that I wanted. It just came in a different way than I thought it should look. And when I think about that other motor coach tour guide, it's like, we know what that's like to be so in it that all we can do is, it's like kind of scrabble to the surface, scratch and claw, and like, oh God, I can barely no, just get away from me. I can almost breathe, right? Just get away from me. Instead of like, there's 5 hands reaching out of like, just grab my arm. No, I got it. Just grab my, no. You're like, and then from the other side, like you were saying, is when you're one of the people who has your hand out that says, just grab my arm.
Yeah.
Like I've been where you've been and it's okay. And they refuse and they're flailing in the water and like they're going to drown. And you're like, what do you do? You're right. How do you support somebody in that position? And I think that, having spoken to you earlier about this particular incident of like letting somebody be in their stuff is often the kindest, best thing that you can do for them.
Yeah,
Hard for us.
It's hard. It's hard, like when you're giving and you've been there, and I, as a soulful perspective for myself, I was really going, okay, I wonder where I'm still doing that now in my own life, like where people are trying to help me and trying to give to me in the best possible way, and I'm pushing away because it's not in my critique of my to-do list. Like it's like, what are you talking about? No, I don't want that now. What do you, or I feel controlled, and that's where I have to do my own internal work and going, okay, what if I could just surrender the timing, what it looks like, what it feels like, my agenda, so that I can actually allow something that wants to happen and to let it in.
So I want to go deeper into this because it's kind of a foreign concept that somebody is refusing your help and you go and do inner work for yourself on where you're refusing help from people.
Right. Totally.
And I love this because we wonder, well, what could I do for that person? And what you just talked about, that very thing is what we can do to change the world. Like, we're so busy trying in the outer. Like, I should have picked up those bags. I should have done this. I could have blah, blah, all the things we could have done in the outer, right? And the inner creates the outer. So if something like that shows up, what's mine to do? It may be that I have a piece for that person. Great. Then I do that. I also have a piece for the greater planet, for myself. Something, when I do my inner work, it also helps that person and everybody else who's been in that situation. And I can't imagine, like, I've been on this planet for over 50 years, and I don't think there's anybody that I've encountered that hasn't experienced something like that, which means now I have a bigger impact because I can do my own inner work.
And it's interesting that inner work, you may, some of you might be thinking, well, is that me taking things too personally? And that's not inner work. I'm not taking it. So here's an example. Yes, there are times when like I can take things personally. I'm like, why is this bothering me so much? Like, why is it bothering me that this person won't accept my help? That's me taking it personally. But me not taking it personally is going inside and going, okay, where have I acted like that before with someone else? And what was my belief system that was making me push the help away? And can I change that? Can I elevate that? Can I create a new narrative that isn't one about being a victim or helpless or hopeless or any of those things, but to actually create a new narrative that says, what if it doesn't look like what I think it's going to look like? What if I could let go of control and allow that I actually live in a friendly universe and be curious of like how it's going to surprise and delight me and coming in a completely different way than I ever would have imagined on my own.
One of the books that I'm rereading right now, because we're going to have someone associated with it on as a guest coming up, so spoiler alert, is a book called The Caravan of Remembering. And in it, one of the characters tells the main character again. And when he's talking about again, is tell the story again from a higher perspective. Tell the story again from a higher perspective. Tell the story again. And it becomes this theme, and it's a theme that I've started to look at in my own life. And that's what I was hearing from you of, I may have processed or digested or gone through enough of this that like, okay, too much drama doesn't come up around it. That's great. And then I experience something like you experienced, and I have another opportunity to tell an even more enlightened version of a story from my own past so that I become lighter and lighter and lighter and have, like when you tell a different story, you become a different person.
Well, that's what we talk about, restoration, restoring something.
Mm.
You're restoring every cell in your being to a different note, to a different tune, like a different vibration, a different rhythm. And going back to this woman who was having a hard day on the tour, who was leading another tour with another motor coach and another motor coach driver. I had talked to the motor coach driver that she was with later on that day, and I said, "Hey, how did it turn out? Is everything okay?" And he said, "Oh, Steph, it just got worse." I said, "How could it get worse? Like, that was pretty crazy." He said, "It got worse. Her energy was so off that when she got on, it created this ripple effect. And one of the passengers stood up and hit his head on they have those TVs on the motor coaches, hit his head on the TV and split his head open. And, it just kept getting worse." And I was like, part of me is like, "Oh, where have I seen that happen?" When you kind of like Monday morning, you get up on the wrong foot, and it's like, it's hard to really kind of get like reset again. Like what you're talking about is
Right.
Go in and give a moment of time to stop, drop in, stop and drop, right? Stop everything that you're thinking, doing, and being right now. Drop in, meaning go inside and just go, wait, I need to reset my energy and give to myself some love and compassion here for a moment. Just make some space so that I can pay attention to where there is support, because there always is support happening.
Mm.
And if I can just get out of my own way for a moment, then things can shift. And so it was a good lesson of, we are more powerful than we ever know. And we do make a huge difference in the world by doing the internal.
Mm.
And it's not, you don't always see the the ramifications or the reflection of that, but it does make a difference. Just like a little drop in the water that makes ripples. Like, what kind of ripple are you making?
And I think that's one of the major challenges that we have, is that we don't see the direct correlation,
Mm-hmm.
right? In the outer world, somebody trips, I help them to stand up, and I've done my good deed for the day. And because I can pat myself off on the back and say, I saw the direct relationship between me and helping that person. Somebody trips, refuses my help. I go do my inner work. I see nothing except for the fact that my help was refused. That person's still angry. I don't see the ripple effect. I don't know that I did anything. So why bother? There's that whole narrative that we're taught of like, it's no one's going to see it, so why bother? And one of our teachers has said, like, character is who you are when nobody's looking. And if I want to develop and up-level my character, that means I go and I do that type of work and change who I am. And what I don't see is that it does ripple out and it affects everybody around me.
Mm-hmm.
Like you mentioned the energy of the woman on the bus. Some people will go, that's not, but it's true. When we're a hot mess, people around us respond to us in their own hot messes.
Well, and she gave me such a gift that day in the way of remembering on how much my internal state of awareness does directly affect the external. And so, as I carried on that day with 45 of my passengers and stuff, I was very aware of my energy inside, not about trying to make myself better or worse than, but just looking at the internal dialogue that I'm having with myself and just calming it down, nurturing it, being kindness, and slowing down. So I'm not in a reactive or an over responsive, like over caretaking place, but just, like being kind to ourselves is so, and I don't mean like, go give yourself, a chocolate sundae. I mean, be kind to yourself in your way of words and the way of, because that will affect your behavior. It affects you internally. Of course, it affects you internally in your own health, but it affects your behavior on how you react or respond to someone.
It also affects how people react and respond to you.
Totally.
It's like, will they be in pity? Will they be in, anger? Will they respond in, it's like the response is different. It really is. And I
Mm-hmm.
think, if there's kind of going back to what we were talking about at the beginning, when we move from this space of, I have to know where the support is coming from and be okay with it. Control. You use the word control. I have to
Mm-hmm.
control that, right? So I ask for something and then I don't have control over how it comes in. The thing is that we don't have control over how it comes in. And when we try to, it will backfire on us. And one of the things that I have found in my 50 plus years is that it never comes the way that I think. When I ask for help, it never comes the way that I think that it does. So, it's like earlier before we got on, Stephanie had said something along the lines of like, I need these 5 things from you, right? And I said, well, the ironic thing is that half of one of those 5 things is actually going to come from me.
Yeah.
The
Versus
other
saying,
4.5 are going to come from someplace else. And when you hold me to the account of, I want all 5 of these things from you,
yeah, good luck.
that's what I did to my husband
Mm.
when I was running the studio. It backfired on both of us and on the studio, right? Whereas if I had looked at it and been like, oh, you know what? I got that half a thing from him. And now those 4.5 other things are going to come in other ways. And my responsibility is to be present and
Well,
open.
and here's another perspective too, is that you say, I want these 5 things. Like that could be coming from your ego.
Yeah.
And I might say, well, I can give you half of one of those, but I've got these other 2 that I can give you that might actually be better than the 5 you're asking for.
Ooh,
Right. And we don't think of that because we get
right.
so attached to, but it's got to be these 5 things and it's got to look this
Mm.
way. And we're so adamant that we haven't made any space for possibility that the person that we're actually asking, for those 5 things from can actually give you something totally different
That you
and
hadn't even considered.
that you
And
hadn't
you're
even
like,
considered
oh,
that's even better.
that's like
Right.
5 plus 5. That's like, oh my God, you could give me that.
Right. Right. I mean, that also happened when I was on the tour. Is like, I had this situation that, I had someone who canceled on me that was supposed to do something for me. And I was like, okay, I don't know what to do now because it fell through. So I had to ask for help. And I asked for help from the motor coach driver. And I said, look, this is what's been promised to the people that we're serving. I've studied those things, but, just take me that those things get handled. And it was a blast. Like it was an absolute blast. Like, I mean, I got those 5 things and more and probably things that I could have given, but it just wasn't right time. Like, I guess what I'm saying is like to be open to the flow, open to the
Yeah.
possibility that there's another story that is happening behind the story that's happening. Do you know what I mean? Like, and we could say
Yeah.
that politically, that's going on in the world right now. We could look at it with our health. We could look at it with relationships. You could look at it at anything. It's like what you see as face value is like, okay, this is a hot mess. But we don't know the greater story that's behind it. And if we're asking for help through it or the highest possibility for us or for them or for whatever, then stay open. Stay open to how it's going to come in because you may literally be turned upside down and backwards, but it'll be a better than what you could ever possibly come up with on your own little small imagination. And I say that flippantly, but really, even if you have a large imagination, we will all have really small imaginations because
Yeah.
we don't practice it and we get really rigid about how we think it should be instead of how it could be.
It's just, I love that. I think that that's a great place to leave people with how could it be instead of how should it be? Because, the possibility is actually endless. And my own imagination is, you're right. It's not practiced. So it's very limited. So if I leave it out there into the possibility of what could be,
And hear me on this one too, because sometimes some of you might be going, "Oh yeah, well if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. It'll just happen." I'm not saying that. There's that other level of it of like, okay, what wants to happen then? It's like I'm still present. I'm not just like leaning back going, "Yeah, well, whatever." I actually was willing to show up and willing to do the things that needed to happen done. I didn't know what those things were, but I know
and
I
that's
was
the
willing.
thing is, what is my part to do?
Right.
Right. And so there is going to be something asked of us. It most often won't be what we thought it was.
That's right. So yeah, not what it should be, but what it could be, and to be open to that possibility that it's going to come in a way that is not, it's going to knock your socks off probably.
In a good way.
In
the
a good
surprise
way.
and delight.
Yes, exactly. In an inspirational way.
That's lovely. So we will be back next week, and soon we're going to have a wonderful guest on named Carissa, and we'll look forward to that podcast. So you can find us on our social media channels, which is LinkedIn and Facebook at The Soulful Leaders. And you can also find us on our business website, which is tslp.life. If you'd like to work with us, please contact us. And you can find our podcast right here on the Soulful Leader Podcast every week. Thanks for joining us.
And that wraps up another episode of the Soulful Leader Podcast with your hosts, Stephanie Allen
and Maren Oslack. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to dive deeper, head over to our website at thesoulfulleaderpodcast.com.
Until next time.